Legal discovery, the raw email chain, that's the evidence. But the prosecutor's summary of what that email means, that's just interpretation.
That is an excellent analogy. The evidence has to stand on its own.
And the framework is crystal clear on this.
Completely. Evidence must exist and be recorded before any internal reasoning or claims can even begin. Because every single thing that comes after has to be grounded in those inspectable original inputs. If the system tried to generate an assertion without first logging the external fact that triggered it,
It's an invalid move. The whole chain is broken.
instant invalidation, the process stops right there.
Okay, so we've recorded the raw, immutable facts. Now we get to step 2. Normalization. Why is this a mandatory intermediate step? Why can't we just start interpreting the evidence right away?
Because the real world is messy. Normalization is the process of translating that raw, chaotic evidence into consistent, structured representation so you can actually compare apples to apples.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, think about trying to aggregate data from a bunch of different medical trials. One source might report a drug dosage in milligrams per kilogram of body weight.
Yeah.
Another reports it in total grams per day. A third might use some proprietary internal naming convention for the chemical compound, and the scales they use for measuring efficacy could be completely different.
So normalization is about addressing all those differences in format, scale, units, terminology.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's essentially creating a common, universal language for all the collected facts so that they can be compared fairly and logically.
It's the ultimate garbage in, garbage out prevention step.
It is. Because if you interpret evidence without normalizing it first, your comparisons become distorted. Your conclusions might just reflect a simple unit mismatch like confusing Celsius with Fahrenheit instead of a genuine scientific discovery.
But the source notes a very specific, very important constraint on this step.
Yes, normalization must not add meaning or interpretation. It has to be a purely mechanical, structural transformation.
So you're just reorganizing the data, not judging it.
Exactly. You are standardizing the data structure, but you are not yet applying any intellectual judgment to what that data means. If you let interpretation creep into the normalization step, then every single claim you make later on inherits that hidden bias. Normalization is about consistency, not meaning.
That makes sense. And that structural consistency then allows us to move to step 3, interpretation. Now the system can finally start, well, thinking.
Right, this is the brainstorming phase. This is where the system proposes possible meanings, where it looks for relationships, for correlations, for implications within that normalized evidence.
This is where the pattern recognition algorithms get to run free.
This is where hypotheses are generated, yes. But, and it's a huge but, this step is still rigorously bounded. It's allowed to propose ideas, but it is absolutely forbidden from asserting that any of those ideas are true.
Okay, so it can say, this looks like a correlation, but not this is a correlation.
Precisely. And interpretation has to remain fundamentally separable from the evidence itself. That's a critical governance rule.
Why is that separation so important?
Because it means that as new contradictory evidence comes in later, the original evidence layer remains fixed and pristine. You only have to revise the interpretation. You don't have to go back and rewrite your entire data history just because one of your hypotheses turned out to be wrong.
So we have raw facts, they're standardized, we have a set of proposed meanings for those facts. Step 4 feels like the moment of commitment. Claim formation.
This is a very high-stakes step. A claim is defined as an explicit, bounded, and falsifiable statement that is derived only from that interpreted evidence. This is the very first time the system is allowed to make a verifiable assertion about the world.
And this is where the requirements become really demanding. Every single claim has to specify its conditions, its assumptions, its scope, and its uncertainty.
Yes, and the rule against absolutes is unforgiving here.
No exceptions.
None. Unconditional or absolute claims, things like X is universally true, are strictly forbidden. Because all knowledge is context-dependent. If you fail to explicitly state the conditions under which your claim was derived, it becomes instantly unreliable the second you step outside of that original context.
Can you give us a really clear example? A claim that meets this standard versus one that fails spectacularly.
Sure. A failed claim would be something simple and broad, like vitamin D improves mood.
Right. We see headlines like that all the time.
All the time. But it's epistemically useless. A properly formed, bounded claim has to look more like this. Under the condition of daily oral administration of 10,000 IU of vitamin D3 for Caucasian male patients between 30 and 40 years old, with baseline serum levels below 20 ng/ml.
Wow, that's specific.
It has to be, and it continues. Mood improvement scores increased by an average of 15 points, assuming baseline health parity, with a known uncertainty margin of plus or minus 5%.
The second one is testable. It's bounded. It's honest about its own limits. The first one is just a slogan.
That clarity is what prevents dangerous overgeneralization. It's the whole point.
Okay, that leads us to step 5, justification. This feels like the core concept of the entire framework.
It is the heart of the matter. Justification is the explicit, transparent linkage. It is the mandatory, complete, and fully auditable connection between the claim you just formed and the specific evidence, the assumptions, and the reasoning that support it.
And if that linkage is broken or if it's incomplete, the claim fails, even if the underlying assertion happens to be correct.
It fails. A claim without sufficient justification is invalid. The framework explicitly rejects lucky guesses.
So it's not enough to be right.
It's not enough to be right. You have to be justifiably right. Justification is the engine that powers independent evaluation, that allows for reproducibility, that invites critical challenge. It's what allows a human observer to instantly audit the system's entire thought process.
This sets the highest bar imaginable. You're demanding verifiable accountability in every single output.
And that necessity leads us to the next step, which introduces dynamism into the system. Step 6, feedback. This is the point where external reality gets to push back against the system's claims.
So feedback is anything that challenges or refines an existing claim. It could be new evidence from a new study, a correction to old data, a contradiction.
Anything. And this is where the system's memory becomes absolutely crucial. Feedback must be meticulously preserved. It can't be overwritten or discarded.
You have to keep a record of the debate.
You have to. This step ensures the system maintains a traceable, uncorrupted history of its own learning and its self-corrections. If the system ignores contradictory evidence, or if it just quietly uses it to recalculate a new truth without preserving the record of the conflict, its reliability just degrades over time.
So feedback creates the historical record of controversy and refinement. That makes sense. But why is step 7, belief update, a separate step? Why not just accept new claims or feedback as they come in?
Because belief update is the controlled, rational decision layer. It's the formal process of revising the system's currently accepted set of claims, and it can only do so based on justified feedback.
It's a pause. It forces a moment of reflection.
It forces a pause, exactly. The system has to stop and decide, does this new evidence or this new line of reasoning sufficiently and justifiably alter the supporting structure of an existing claim to warrant a change in our accepted belief?
It's designed to prevent knee-jerk reactions to weak or unsubstantiated data. You're demanding rigor even in the act of changing your mind.
Exactly. Beliefs should only change when new evidence meets a certain threshold of sufficiency. By separating this step from the raw ingestion of feedback, we make sure that changes aren't impulsive and that the history of every revision is clear, traceable, and even reversible. The whole canonical loop is just the scientific method baked into software running in perpetuity.
We've nailed down the process, that fixed, unyielding path of the canonical loop. Now we need to look at the structure of the thing it produces. If the loop is the action, then the minimal truth unit, or MUT, is the object.
The MUT is the atomic element of knowledge in this system. It's the smallest possible unit that can be recognized. And the rule here is just as uncompromising. If a piece of information cannot be reduced to one or more minimal truth units, it is simply not knowledge within this framework.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting for me. Let's break down the 6 mandatory components of every single MUT, starting with component 1, the claim.
The claim is the core statement. It's that explicit assertion about the world, but as we discussed, it has to be bounded in scope and in context. It must be a statement that is capable of being judged against external evidence.
And again, the framework is just actively hostile to vague or sweeping statements.
Oh, absolutely. Unconditional, absolute, or vague statements are forbidden. They're scientifically useless because you can't meaningfully falsify them or revise them.
So they're just banished.
They're banished from the knowledge base because they pollute the system with assertions that can't participate in that justification loop. They're dead ends.
Okay. Component 2. Evidence reference. Now, this sounds obvious, but elevating it to a mandatory atomic component feels like the firewall against internal fabrication.
It is the grounding mechanism. It is the unbreakable link. It has to point directly and specifically to the raw observations, the measurements, the documented results that support the claim. This is the single strongest defense the system has against hallucination and invention.
So, if a claim can't show its work,
if it can't point back to the raw, immutable evidence that it came from, It fails the MUT test and it's rejected, period.
So it doesn't matter how good or how plausible the claim sounds. If that reference link is broken, the entire unit of knowledge just collapses.
It's invalid. A claim without an evidence reference is an ungrounded assertion. It is not knowledge.
Right. Component 3, conditions. We touched on this during claim formation, but why is this context setting so essential that it has to be part of the atomic structure itself?
Well, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the conditions component addresses the fundamental reality that all knowledge is inherently context-dependent.
Knowledge isn't a universal constant.
Exactly. It operates within boundaries. The conditions specify the assumptions, the context, and the constraints under which the claim is believed to hold true.
So if we take, say, a machine learning model designed to predict market volatility, that model might perform brilliantly during periods of low interest rates.
Yep.
But if the claim about its accuracy omits the condition during periods of low interest rates, that piece of knowledge becomes catastrophic when the environment changes.
Precisely. Omitting the conditions creates this illusion of reliability outside of the claim's actual tested scope. It makes the knowledge not just unreliable, but actively dangerous for a system that's designed for real-world discovery. You have to know when the knowledge applies, and just as importantly, when it ceases to apply.
That makes perfect sense.
Right.
Okay, component 4, confidence. This is the metric of support.
Yes. Confidence is the calculated degree of support that the claim receives from all of the available justified evidence and reasoning at that specific moment in time.
And the distinction here is crucial.
It is. Confidence does not represent certainty or ultimate truth. It is not a binary true or false judgment.
It sounds more like a continuously updated score based on the weight of the evidence.
That's a perfect way to put it. Confidence is dynamic by design. As new evidence is added, or as existing evidence is challenged through the feedback loop, the confidence score has to be allowed to increase or to decrease. It's a transparent reflection of the accumulated weight of justification, not an assertion of ultimate fact.
And that leads directly and necessarily to component 5, uncertainty, the required partner to confidence. You can't have one without the other.
You can't. Uncertainty is the explicit acknowledgement of the known limitations. It represents the gaps, the ambiguities, or the known flaws in the evidence, or in the initial assumptions, or in the reasoning chain that led to the claim.
The source material draws a very interesting distinction between uncertainty and ignorance. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. Ignorance is simply not having the information. You don't know what you don't know. Uncertainty is actually a higher form of knowledge. How so? Because it explicitly identifies what is not known or what is not well supported based on the evidence that we do have. By forcing the system to explicitly state its uncertainty, to map out the boundaries of its current knowledge, it fundamentally prevents systemic overconfidence.